For some people, the wait for Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater began over 2 years ago, at the last and probably final PlayStation Showcase. It's far from exclusive to the PS5, but somehow fitting given the original's launch on the PlayStation 2. In terms of Metal Gear remakes, it made the most sense, going back to the beginning, regardless of pretense, because Konami wanted to introduce a new generation to Metal Gear Solid. More pointedly and sincerely, it was also the company's return to console and PC game development after having sworn off the same years prior. What better opportunity for a win, if not remaking, well, one of the greatest games of all time? No Hideo Kojima, a fact that it confirmed above all else. And despite working with Virtuous, better known as a support studio for ports at the time, Konami Digital Entertainment was co-developing. But were years of rumors about Metal Gear Solid and Silent Hill finally returning to the gaming fold, and nostalgia enough to drive the hype? Well, yes. Konami has tactfully and somewhat oddly showcased a moderate amount of the title, starting with the visuals and then moving on to hands-on previews that outline its quality of life features. A compass for those who need to gather their bearings, but no radar because that would go against the spirit of the original. And it is an item, which means some additional management and care. Quick dial to quickly get in touch with specific characters, bypassing the need to scroll through in the pause menu, and even designed like an actual radio dial to capture that feeling. Adding new items and weapons to the quick access bar. And that's not even getting into how game-changing the new over-the-shoulder perspective is, even as Konami promises the same legacy controls and perspective alongside as a filter for that classic touch. While it utilizes voice clips from the original release, Naked Snake David Hayter was confirmed to be returning alongside other incredible talent to re-record some voice lines, while Cynthia Harrell returns for an improved version of the iconic Snake Eater theme. But the story isn't changing, assures the publisher. The many new options are, well, optional. You would think that Konami itself is sneaking through the jungle with the links it's going to not step out of bounds with fans, but the commitment to the original is reassuring for many. But this isn't just a remake of one of the greatest games of all time, meaning it must be perfect in every single way. For many, this is a moment frozen in time, a core memory of their gaming lives. They're paying for a faithful reproduction, that unmistakable atmosphere, those performances carried by the same legendary actors, and those iconic moments. They don't just want to crawl through the jungle with Snake with Unreal Engine 5 visuals, but for this to be Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater with great graphics. As such, it makes sense to nitpick problems with the animations, but whether the controls will feel the same, even in Legacy mode, or the revamped textures and character models will cater to one's perfect memory of the original, well, that remains to be seen. Of course, the hype is still palpable, simply on name value alone. And yet, as faithful as it wants to be, you have to wonder if it's really living up to the legacy of Hideo Kojima, who, alongside his team back in the day, made it possible. As exciting as Delta Snake Eater and really the whole prospect of Konami making actual video games instead of licensing their properties for pachinko is, my anticipation more of a wait and watch goes back to 2015 when Konami booted Kojima out of the company. We may never get the true story in either party's own words, but the rumors of isolating the developer from his team, removing his name from other titles, profiting off of his work while allegedly making life difficult, denying his presence at the Game Awards, and so on, it all remains fresh. That same Hideo Kojima, who by the way laughed and said, "No, I won't," when asked if he would play the remake, which is perfectly fine for various reasons, even if he didn't provide one outright. Given his original vision, and how many times he's doubtlessly played the 2004 title, would it really make sense to experience the same thing? But I honestly wouldn't blame him if he didn't want to embroil himself in another kerfuffle with the publisher, especially after giving his honest thoughts on Metal Gear Survive. For Kojima, who's seen success with Death Stranding 1 and 2, and has 2 high-profile exclusives in OD and Fizzant coming up, getting involved with Konami in any shape or form is probably the last thing that he wants. And yet, there is a responsibility on the publisher's part to live up to that. The remake could be as authentic as possible, perfectly crafted in every single way, and still not be enough for some fans for whatever reason. It may not even offer the same feeling as it did all those decades ago because we're all different people, and nostalgia is as whimsical as it is unreliable. Yet while the publisher can go ahead and say that its development team is working hard on the remake, even without the involvement of Kojima and artist Yoji Shinkawa, it still feels like there's a void in not acknowledging their legacy, much less appreciating how there wouldn't be anything to the remake without them. I like to think that series producer Noriaki Okamura is somewhat aware of this and how the remake could be perceived in the long run. Speaking to PC Gamer magazine recently, he said, quote, "For new users who are just getting started with the MGS series, MGS Delta may be more familiar. For longtime MGS series fans, the Master Collection version may feel superior. As for which version is better, quote, we would like to leave that decision up to the players themselves." He would also add that, quote, "With many of the original staff members now pursuing new paths, we are aware that there are still elements lacking in our ability to fill the gaps left by their departure. But he believes the team gained a, quote, new sense of its capabilities by developing this remake." Hader also weighed in, stating that after recently replaying the original, which is, quote, "still a banger," will Delta replace MGS3? I don't know. I just think it's a different upgraded version. Now, personally, the remake could hypothetically offer dozens of changes over the original, rip entire pieces from the script, and even alter how core mechanics work. If it's a fun game, I believe it can still stand side by side with the original. I've always felt that if someone doesn't like a remake for all the changes made, well, good news, the original is still there, except in cases where it hasn't received a re-release on more contemporary platforms, of course. It isn't a question of whether Delta Snake Eater can offer as accurate a facsimile of Metal Gear Solid 3 as possible to please fans, shareholders, the creatives, or even Kojima himself. It's more a matter of whether Konami can live up to the legend's legacy, and in turn, the legacy of the franchise itself, by giving it the respect that it truly deserves. Perhaps this is a matter that's inseparable from the quality of the remake for many fans, and maybe it will be irrelevant if it turns out to be excellent. And yet, how much of that could be on its own merits when it is so heavily leaning on the past, while the higher-ups deny such a hefty part of it? Well, we'll find out when Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater launches on August 28th for Xbox Series X and S, PS5, and PC. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at GamingBolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.